Welcome back to the I Empower podcast, where stories become art and art becomes important reminders. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. This week, we're continuing the celebration of our 10th episode drop with a little montage that I put together for you guys of some of my favorite moments from the past 10 episodes. So while I prepare for my new and upcoming guests, you guys sit back and listen to some of my favorite moments. Let's go ahead. What's the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you?
My father. It was two things that he said to me that I will live with for the rest of my life. He said, the first thing he said was, self-honesty is most painful, yet most rewarding. Because no one can use anything to try to hurt you because you already know yourself, forgiven yourself, and accepted yourself. And I was like, oh my God, like, duh. Like, he's like, people can come at me and say, oh, you were an alcoholic. He's like, yeah, and your point? Right. Like, I know this about me, but I also fix myself as well, Shout out to him. He's been clean 18 years. Like, shout out to him. I know, right? I'm so proud of him.
That's amazing.
That was a piece of advice he gave me. And then there was another piece of advice that he gave me. He said to me, don't be afraid to fail. He said, be afraid of not trying, because at least when you fail, you know how far you could get. And you can try it again and will get there faster because you already have the tools too. And so now I don't get afraid. Like, I just go, and then if I hit a wall, I take a step back. Let me see what got me this far and what went wrong. And then attack it from that way and correct that way and go a little bit more further. So it's just, those two things have really, really stuck with me as far as personally and in my business life. Because in business, if you don't risk it all, you won't have a reward. I'm just saying. I mean, it is what you just got to go for it. When I say risk it all, you got to throw all your fears away. You've got to throw all your doubts. I don't care if it's halfway done. I don't care if listen, I started in my living room, okay? And in my kitchen tie-dyeing.
All right? Awesome. We like to talk about stepping into our own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. What do you think of, or how would you describe the power that you have and try to step into every day?
That's a good one, girl. I know my power is my voice, and I am a natural born leader. I know that. But it took me a while to understand it and understand that everybody's not going to be comfortable with that, but it is not your job to make them comfortable with it. And know how to use it, right? So I had to learn how to, and it's crazy because as a woman, you got to have a balance because of society. Jackson, stop. Because of society, they'll say, oh, she's being a bitchy black woman or a bitter black woman when you're just passionate, right? Oh, she's loud when she's just passionate, or she's just whining because she feels. Jackson, stop. Can you turn that back up? Turn that back up. Thank you. Turn it back up. Turn it back up. Thank you. Thank you. Can you go, please? Thank you. And knowing that I had a voice, knowing everybody wasn't going to be comfortable with it, and being okay with that, right? And knowing that because you are a leader, everybody is not going to be happy with the choices that you make as a collective of whoever you are leading. and understand the responsibility with that. But part of it is you must serve. And that is what I had to learn. I had to learn the service part more so than anything. When you're charged to be a different kind of leader, right? For really like a whole community of people. My son has taught me how to serve. I had to service his needs over mine in order to figure what it is out and to make him be able to be comfortable with being himself and to communicate with me. So in that, and the more I stepped into Seventh and Bond and became more vocal and things on Facebook, I realized, I said, okay, I have a voice. And people are drawn to me. And I have to accept it because it was eating away at me. Like, right? Do I want to step out here and be pressure. Like, okay, do I want to come out here and say, okay, I'm an advocate for this, and you're gonna listen to me, and guess what? You're gonna buy into it too. You're gonna believe in it just like I am, because you're gonna see how convicted, how convinced, and how I'm gonna lead you to understand what it is, whatever this greater purpose is, right? And it was just me and God in the bed, and I'm laying there, I'm talking to him, and I realized, I was like, I have to serve people, but I have to serve people with educating them and empowering them. Because when you water, right? When you water other people, those other people begin to water you back. And before you know it, while you're watering individual people, you're building a garden. And your garden is blooming and you're shaping, because now the water is overflowing everywhere. And that made me say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into my power and I'm going to use it for the greater good. But it takes a process. Because, yeah, you're born. There are certain things that a leader is just born with. And that's charisma. That's just what it is. You have to be charismatic. And outgoing, bold, all that great stuff. You're just naturally born with it. But as you go along, you can either not really be a good leader, or you can be one for the people, aka like, you know, the Barack Obamas of the world, who really, I love him for the hope factor. And that's what I want to do. I want to give hope to people that are like my son, of course, or disabled, or even people that are like me, people that find something similar in me, that like, oh my God, I understand, I feel her. I stepped into my power so people like me can see if I can do it. Yes. To see if I can do it, you can do it too. Are you going to say hi? Hi. Okay. If I can do it, you can do it too, right? Against all odds. And then also, just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't go after your dreams, right? Doesn't mean that you don't have a purpose, because I think that is a myth, that moms can't do this, you can no longer do that. No, yes, you can. Actually, your children make you want to do it bigger. They make you want to do it better, because you want to make the world a better place for them to live in. You want their lives to be better than what you had. You don't want them to struggle. You want them to walk into abundance when they get older. You want them to be able, because unfortunately, there are talented children out here, but because they don't have the access to the stuff to really cultivate and nurture their gifts, sometimes there's a million Michael Jordans running around here. They just don't have the access to be at a D1 school.
Right.
You know? So I say all that again to say this. Stepping into my power was accepting my purpose. And accepting my purpose was actually finding what it was and saying to myself, okay, this is it. I thought it was going to be this because I thought I was just going to be this bomb ass clothing designer. I thought, this is what it was going to be. I was going to be on my billboards in magazines for my clothes. And yeah, that still may be, right? We're not counting that out, right? But I'll probably be in magazines more for being the mom. The mom who self-taught her kid, when they told her no, who left her job to give her kid a better life and to change the world person by person, book by book, right?
That statement right there.
And I just had to really say, okay.
Would you say that you've kept a pretty positive attitude the whole time?
I'd say for the most part, everybody has bad days, and I just have to be real with myself on that. And like, it's not just me, everybody has bad days, and then usually if I'm having a bad day, I'll call somebody to, like, I don't know, cheer me up or something, whether it be my boyfriend or some of my best friends that's been with me since day one.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, you just gotta keep reminding yourself, and then if it's just a really bad day, I'm just, like, I don't have to live this day over. Like, tomorrow's a new day, like, we're good.
It's gonna be better. I'm just gonna go to sleep, and then it's gonna be different tomorrow. That's awesome. Having that support system is amazing for anybody, especially anybody that's going through any kind of troubles or anything like that. Like, it's definitely good to find your tribe there.
Whenever
gems.
Whenever I first got injured, one of the very first people I met in a wheelchair was my rec therapist. It was her husband. And he came and he gave me the best advice that anybody gave me. And, whenever you get injured, paralyzed and all that stuff, like, I was 14 and I'm sitting there thinking about, like, how am I going to live like this for the rest of my life? Like, how am I going to graduate? How am I going to, like, have, like, relationships?
Right.
How am I going to do this? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then he came and he's like, don't get overwhelmed. Don't look at years to come. Don't look at months to come. Take it day at a time. So I just learned to just shut my brain off. I'm like, don't get overwhelmed. Like, don't look at all that. Like, that doesn't matter. Today matters. So
that's awesome. That was actually one of my questions that I was going to ask you. Was like, what's the best piece of advice that someone's given you? But, like, I think that we all can definitely benefit from that advice.
Another thing to add with, like, just my attitude with everything. I mean, part of it does stem from me being injured as a kid, and then but I also did therapy with a lot of kids too. Because I got injured as a teenager, but I saw a lot of kids like doing therapy, and I mean, some of them would be having missing limbs and, like, born without limbs, and all kinds of stuff. People from different countries where they have bombs and, like, all kinds of stuff. Like, I had. How do you think
that impacted your like, how you felt about your injury, seeing other people, children younger and maybe even your age, going through similar situations?
The way that my occupational therapist described it was, because you really don't see a lot of kids being the way adults are about their injury. You don't see kids, like, keep them down. They're usually just like, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah, they're resilient. They're just like, okay, like,
so
gotta keep trucking.
The way my OT put it was, kids see it as an inconvenience, while adults see it as a disability. Kids are like, oh, this is inconvenient. I'll figure a way around it. And, I would see kids in wheelchairs playing hide and seek. And just because it's not the way other kids will play hide and seek, it still didn't keep them from playing hide and seek. So I think that I love that. I love that as a message, is that just because you do something different, like, don't let it keep you from doing it.
Right. Absolutely.
My doctors both said that these things don't have to have an external trigger. They often run in families, and people, whenever you say you're depressed, I say, oh, but why? It's like, there doesn't have to be a reason.
Right.
Like,
and I think that is so important. Yeah. And I think that is so important that people understand that it doesn't have to have, like you said, a trigger or something, traumatic, that it can just exist because it does. And then, we need to, as a society, I think it's probably definitely gotten better. And you could attest to this, that society's becoming more aware and understanding, and we're trying to destigmatize mental health. And I think that, I had a conversation with some friends a few weeks ago. We were actually talking about mental health and like how some of us have experienced it older, the older we didn't have any issues when we were younger, and then we would have it. And now we, a friend of mine struggles with it now. And they're like, wonder why it seems like everybody's has an issue now. And it's, and my response to that is because it's acceptable now, a little bit more acceptable. Right. So people are speaking up and seeking the help that they need and talking about it, which can be a part of the healing process too.
Right. And I think I agree with you. More people are speaking up about it, but you also have to look at it in the sense that the brain is the most complex organ in the body. There's a lot of room for failure there. There's a lot of room for, things to happen, for things to go wrong. It's not like, your pancreas, like, okay, so my pancreas doesn't make enough insulin. I have type 1 diabetes or whatever.
Right.
There's far fewer ways for other organs to go wrong than there is for the human brain. So the fact that the brain is the most complex organ in the body, and that we're the most complex species.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't hear of like amoebas getting depression, right? They're single cell organisms.
Right.
There's only one cell. It either goes wrong or it doesn't. But I think that, that 1 in 5 Americans that have a diagnosed mental condition is probably an understatement, because a lot of people still don't look for the help. They don't want to get the help.
Yeah.
And
or they don't recognize it. Kind of like how the symptoms that you were telling me, like I related to a few of those, but some of the ones that you were saying, like you said, you think it's circumstantial, or because of what you have going on in your life. You're stressed out, it's just my job, it's school, yada yada. So like it's so, like you said, it's so complex. There are so many different levels to mental illness and different things that we have to face. So that's an incredible story, and I'm so glad that you came on today and shared that, because it was news. I mean, it was news to me. I didn't realize that, that it could be, not triggered by something, just because of my personal experience with it was a trigger. So I'm thinking, a lot of people, a lot of people do, you have a traumatic injury or, that happens. So
and those cases also those cases are absolutely valid. I mean, there's a reason why war veterans come back with a lot of mental illness too. So it can very much be an external trigger. I think for a long time, people were looking at only the external, and they didn't think, well, I mean, some families have high cholesterol. Well, you know what? Some families have bipolar too. One of the things that changed in me was like, okay, after this whole ordeal, and now that I'm feeling better, I have 2 choices. I can either be a part of the solution and talk about it and show people that you can come out better on the other side of, suicidal ideation and years of, extreme highs and lows, or I can stay silent and let this propagate to the next generation.
Right.
So, I was like, I can't stay quiet about this, because that is the thing that prevented me from getting help way back when I was 16. So I decided that I'm just going to be open about it. Paxil or mirtazapine, I want you to see that those medications saved my life. I want you to see that, you're going to see like a million bad stories. You got to see the good ones, because healing does happen. You may not see it because people are not as willing to talk about the good stuff as they are about the bad, but it does happen, and it happens every single day.
for me, I think a lot of the advice that I give is centered around like help them regain control over their situation and help empower them and help them remember how strong they are. Or if you're a survivor yourself, like what are some things that you can do to remind yourself of how strong you truly are? So for me, like physical fitness is a big part of my journey. And it just really helps me to remember like, hey, you didn't die today. And you're a little bit stronger than yesterday. Like it may have sucked the whole time, but but you did it.
But I'm here and I'm kicking ass. That's awesome. How would you describe the power that you have to try and step into every day?
That's such a good question. So I think for me, I think fitness is a big part of this for me. And that's the easiest way for me to demonstrate this, because I think we all fall into this comparison trap of like, wow, and I've even fallen into this, would I be able to do what she did?
Right.
And so I think it's important to remind ourselves on a daily basis how strong we are. And I think that looks very different for every person, as we've said, a couple times. And so for me, I think stepping into my power has been part of that journey is fitness for me, because it does remind me like, hey, I'm a little bit stronger. Like it does something inside, that it's not a cognitive, I guess, change that you're making. And I think that really helps me to feel a little freer and share my story a little more openly. And every time I do that and I get the positive feedback for being vulnerable, it helps me to be a little more vulnerable, and it helps me to kind of share that power, because I think vulnerability is a huge power.
What's the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who was in the thick of your struggle if you had just a few moments with them?
I don't know if she would listen, because she's very stubborn. But I would tell her that feelings are okay, and that you were affected by your trauma, and that's okay. It doesn't make you any weaker to accept that your trauma had an effect on you.
Wow. You're such an incredible person for sharing that with everyone. So when did you when did you decide that you wanted to talk about this and that you wanted to share your experience, and what are your motivations behind that? Just
I guess when I was in my early 20s, I got my first real job. I mean, I had other little jobs prior, but in that environment, I was surrounded by hundreds of people. And I don't know, I guess I just started speaking to them, and I started to see things and make connections. And I started to realize that everybody has trauma. And that's the thing that I do talk about, with my own therapist and just in my own education. There's no way that any one person or child can ever escape trauma. You're going to experience it, unfortunately, at some point in life. The only difference being is sometimes people won't recognize their own trauma. And what I've seen actually happen a lot is they hear my story and they're like, well, I thought I had it bad, but I guess since my life isn't like yours, then I shouldn't complain. And I always tell people, no, that's not, trauma is not a competition. Trauma is trauma. Right. And trauma is different to everybody. So if it's valid for you, then it's valid,
How would you think, or how would you describe the power that you have to try and step into every day?
I would say that it's challenging, the power that I do have to step into every day, because I do actually suffer from depression and anxiety and different things. It's not who I am, it's just what I have. Yeah. And some days are more challenging than others, but I've also recognized the fact that I'm human and I'm going to have bad days. And sometimes even just getting up to just take a shower or brush your teeth is a huge victory.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's all about celebrating the little victories. And, the following day is a new day. So it's all about just kind of living in the present moment.
Yes. So many people say that. I love that you said that. I've had so many guests say that, today is today. Yeah, tomorrow is a new day. So yeah, I love that. And my husband, he's like a huge advocate of like, he tells me that all the time. He's like, it's just, live every day as today,
It
and
is,
tomorrow's a
yeah.
new day. So if you're having a bad one, it's going to get better. What's the best piece of advice you have ever been given?
Hmm. Honestly, I think what has really helped me in my journey is realizing that I only have control of myself. So before, I always wanted to control everything or everyone or wonder what people
Right.
were thinking, and that drives anybody mad.
Yes.
So I just think that worrying about what's in your control versus what's out of your control is a huge part in healing and growing, and just it's so awesome for anybody if you can recognize that.
So as a parent, I know that you always hear you want to be a better parent than what you had. Even if you didn't have a bad parent or bad childhood, we always want. I remember growing up as a kid and being like, I'm going to let my kid do this and I'm not going to let my kid do that. But, when you get older and you realize that some of those things are important roles. But again, we always want to be the better parent than what we had. So how has this experience affected you as a mother?
Yeah, that's a great observation too, because I always knew, despite that I didn't know my mom's a narcissist or even the word toxic, like I knew that I didn't like so many things about how I was parented. So you're absolutely right. You think like, well, like even with being strict, I was like, this just doesn't work because, if you're just punishing me and you're not actually letting me be honest with you, I'm gonna be an expert liar, and I definitely was.
Right. Exactly.
Like if anyone knew how to keep a secret, trust me, I came up with some elaborate things in high school. But
Right.
anyway, then I thought to myself, this makes no sense. Like, of course, I'm gonna let my kids. I'm not gonna judge them and things like that. And it's funny because now, of course, I still am trying to parent different. But then I also notice certain things, like the things that are obvious, like okay, I don't want to be strict like they were, or I'm not gonna be judgmental or say hateful things about their body. But then more things, when you realize like things that are ingrained, for instance, like I was always taught that when your kid is bad, you need to yell at them. And then even though I knew my mom was toxic, I thought, oh, well, of course you're going to yell at your kid when they're bad. Like that's the way they learn.
Right.
And then,
Exactly.
yeah. And then I was like, well, I don't want to yell. I don't want anyone to yell at me. And they don't deserve that. Like just because they don't have power to say, don't do that. So it was these kind of toxic parenting things that I think aren't exclusive to narcissistic parents. I think a lot of parents did the best they could, even though they're
Right.
not narcissistic. There's things to improve on. So for me, like I'm just learning things with my kids more, like the gentle parenting approach. We have the power to shape a lot of how, not necessarily the events in our life, but how we respond. So to me, power means like, hey, I don't need to control every single thing because that's going to drive me nuts. I can't control so and so's reaction or the events in my life, but what I can manage is the way that I react, and that's
Yes.
going to give me a whole lot of power back.
I think that's a good outcome or result of 2020 and the pandemic, is that people are seeking help more now than ever before. And seeing a therapist and counseling isn't a dirty word like it used to be. It's still a lot
Yes.
of communities that still see it as a stigma, or mental illness as a stigma. Or if you go to a therapist or talk to a counselor, you have a problem, like a mental problem.
Yes.
But I do believe I'm really excited to see how we're going to turn around, because we're going to get the help that we need.
I know. I'm so glad that you said that. Like 2020 was just, it was, I grew a lot during 2020. And it's an unfortunate event that happened. We lost a lot of people because of it. But I'm trying to look at the good in it. And we've had a lot of things that have happened that have just paved the way for better tomorrow. And for me, like you said, the destigmatizing of counseling and therapy. I had a family member growing up that would seek therapy, or had to go and see a counselor. And it was we always thought of it as an embarrassing thing. Like I didn't want to tell anybody about this person getting therapy or counseling because I thought that, like you said, something was wrong with them, or it was it was a dirty thing. So I'm so glad that now people are like, yes, I get therapy. Like, and now it's like, if you don't get therapy, people are like, what? You don't talk to a therapist or you don't talk to a counselor? So like, I love where that's going, because I think that everybody could probably benefit having somebody that's a neutral, unbiased person that you can talk to about the things that you're going through. Like, I'm such a huge therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist fan.
Yeah. I did a lot of reading the last like 5 years, and it's like it's a part of your care regimen. Like, you have a primary care physician, you have a dentist, an optometrist, you go get your eyes checked, you get your hearing checked every now and then, and you get your mind checked, because this way they can see a pattern or an issue before it becomes a major issue. Everyday work. And it's like every time you get solid on that and confident, something comes along to try to knock you off that pedestal. It's like jousting, and you might it's like American Gladiator. You might knock your opponent off, but daggone it, someone comes with a bigger jousting stick every time, and you still got to hold your ground. So every day I'm just back into, meditation and affirmations and speaking positivity into my life every day and throughout the day, because it's an everyday uphill battle to own that confidence.
Yes, I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, I just think it's so important that like people realize that it's an everyday thing. We're growing every day. Being a better person doesn't necessarily happen. I think I can say that it doesn't happen overnight, not necessarily, but like, some things, everything is a work in progress. And I think that that's okay, and that we need to normalize that.
Yes, we do. It is normal.
Do you think that that alcohol and the party girl persona is glamorized, and that's the reason why a lot of us, a lot of people, party boy too, I mean, this could go either way, is glamorized, and that's why we're like, oh, it's okay, I got super wasted last night, it was a good time, like, because we feed into that kind of behavior as like a funny, positive thing, when realistically it's not a safe one. Do you think that that's what it is?
I mean, it's definitely, I think it's glamorized for both men and women, and it is in different ways. I think for women, it's like this, you kind of see it as you're growing up, like on TV or in movies. It's people drinking like out of fancy glasses or having a martini or a Cosmo. And it's like, oh, they're so adult. They're so classy. And they have these really great jobs, but they're still able to, hang out with their friends and have a family and drink, and everyone loves them and they have so much fun. And I think as a woman, that's what you see a lot, is it's glamorized in this way that it's like it almost like makes you more attractive in a way if you're able to drink and you're also more fun. And then I think, like you see that over and over again. And then for men, the way that they see it growing up, and I think it translates a lot, especially, I mean, I don't know if it's because I went to a state school or what, but they see the way that like men are always drinking on TV, or like they're just doing something stupid. They're like in a bar, just like pounding beers, and then like
having a
them
good
and other
time.
buddies. Yeah. Yes, like they do something like crazy and whatever, and then it's like you see that play out in real life, and I do wonder, like, does it play out that way for men because of how it's, presented for them? Like, I feel like for men, it's always been this like, haha, good time, we're gonna do something really stupid and it's gonna be super funny. For women, it's this like level of sophistication that you can't reach until you're able to drink. And the whole like party girl persona is, everyone loves the party girl in like your life. Like when you're growing up, it's like you're jealous of those. When you're in high school, it's like the popular kids are the ones that are, like having the house parties and doing whatever. You get to college, that's the same people you're seeing. And as you're growing up, it depends on how you grew up, but you see certain people are looked at as being more fun and more laid back because of their drinking habits. And I think it's glamorized in different ways. And it does, and in both situations, it's like, it makes it seem like everything's okay. I think it's only recently that we've been seeing more of like the realistic, like dark side of drinking in media, honestly. Yeah, because like I think it's always kind of been there for like narcotics and drugs in terms of like how I think they don't touch on it properly in movies all the time, but it's like that's the only time you ever see a lot of like real, you know, struggle and these horrible, you know, after effects. But for
reality
drinking,
TV,
but for drinking, it's always just super fun. Everything's great, and that obviously, I mean, the big hand in that is that alcohol is legal. So it's the only one that's legal.
How would you describe the power that you have to step into every day?
Yeah, I now look at it as something I have earned and I'm worthy of. I used to look at it really negatively, and I think it's because of the way power has been just like presented to me my whole life. I think especially like as a woman, it's really difficult. And also in the way in which I work, like in, you know, like corporate America, it's like, you know, power is the rich guy above you. So aligning yourself with power kind of always, for me, felt weird because it almost had like a negative connotation to it. Or if you were saying you felt powerful or you were powerful because I had those negative associations with it, it's like, okay, you're like conceited, or your ego is a little out of whack, or you're being a narcissist. But now that I have learned, you know, like people see power in different lights, and I've learned that I see it in knowing myself and knowing what I want and having confidence in my choices and realizing that I do have a voice that I let stay very quiet for a really long time. Like that is power to me. Like power to me is being able to recognize all of your own worth and like channeling it and being able to help anyone else, or even if it's just like one person, like having that tiny bit of influence just to like lead somebody else down a better path and help them find their own comfort in like their self-empowerment, to me is that's what power feels like to me. And I think I wish that I had learned that more, I think, growing up, and I wish that it was viewed more in that light.
What do you think could be done to fix this problem? Like, do you, if you could just, you know, have all the resources in the world to do what you think needs to be fixed, because you experienced this firsthand, and one of the most intense ways of experience is not only were you in addiction, you were pregnant and you had to carry your pregnancy through the, you know, through the entire time of your incarceration and deliver, and then you went back to prison. Is that correct?
Literally the next day, they sent me back, put me back in a cell for the remainder of my time. And there was really no health care afterwards either. So I had to heal up on my own. And they gave me some ibuprofen and Tylenol, and they're like, you know, sent me on my merry way. So.
Yeah. And then you talked about postpartum depression too. And I can connect with that because after my recent child, I experienced that. And that is something in a whole, like that is intense for some people. So like if you had all the resources in the world and you could do whatever you wanted, like how would you fix that problem? Like, what do you think is the best way, firsthand experience, to fix that?
There has to be better healthcare for inmates. Like healthcare in general. For example, I lived for a few years right across the way from a girl that had seizures, horrible seizures, like grand mal seizures. She was always banging her head. And the reason that the seizures were not under control is because she couldn't get the proper medication, because there was really no, like, insurance doesn't cover it in prison. You know, I don't really know the ins and outs of the healthcare and why they couldn't get her seizure medication, but they kept trying different types of medication and they weren't working. And so she ended up having to wear a helmet. She literally got different types of like brain defects because of how hard she was hitting her head. She was so confused. The day I saw her, when I first met her, was vastly different from the day that I left her, because she was there for a longer period of time than me. And she had different brain defects when I was leaving, and her husband ended up trying to sue the state, because of the fact that they could have prevented it. But at the time, you're just a number. You're just a last name. Like, nobody cares about who you actually are and what you need. So if I had resources, the healthcare system needs to be fixed. They need to provide women with the proper care. Women, men, anybody incarcerated, they need to provide them with the proper care. Mental health, they need to provide some sort of mental health, whether that's even people coming into the prison to do something pro bono, they have to have something there, because a lot of people are there from past traumas. There's different traumatic events that send you to prison. It's never a nice, easy event that sends you there.
Yeah,
it's
like
always
a one and done. There's a root cause to
that.
Yes.
And it's always a traumatic event. There's not one story that I heard from somebody I was in there with that it was like, oh, this was what happened and it was great,
Yeah, I decided to wake up today and this is what happened.
Yes, I decided to go to prison today and it was great.
Yeah.
No,
oh my gosh.
There has to be trauma therapy. There has to be mental health therapy. There has to be someone you can talk to, like just somebody that's not another inmate that you can go sit with, like a guidance counselor, because even me having to give over temporary guardianship of my daughter when I had her, I had no legal resources. There was a librarian there that tried to help me, but he couldn't do anything better than like help me notarize the form. Like that was it. The people that helped me were other inmates, and thank God that they were there, because I did not have the resources on hand to be able to know, oh, this is what I need, or I would have had to give my baby up for adoption,
Oh
there's
my
just
gosh.
nothing. There's no legal guidance. There's no, and especially if you come in there and you don't have money, then you get the bare basics. You get like a couple of pads for your period. You get like, maybe a shampoo and conditioner, and that's it. Then you go without the things that you need. You get 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts, and if you're there for, 3 years, then that's what you get. And you have to wash them yourself in your sink. Like it's the lowest form that anyone could have somebody live in.
Right. And I think that that's what needs I think that people need to realize and just kind of like put themselves in that situation and take a step back and look at the circumstances that that led up to, we don't know everybody's story, but like I think the biggest problem is that we just, as a nation, as a society, don't have compassion for people. And I think if we just had more compassion and understanding that would, us on the outside looking in could, having compassion towards those people. And then, I think if there was a movement that happened that could just really try to, reform, I guess is the word that I'm looking for.
100%.
It's just, it's so sad. And like, and one of the things that my husband and I, we like to talk about is how, there is no rehabilitation in prison. And then unfortunately, a lot of people who go back, who are released back into the same environments that got them to the place that they are now, and then just become a product. And it's just a vicious cycle because of the things that, it makes it hard getting a job once you are considered a felon or you have a record. Finding work and then just being taken seriously. Like there's just, oh my gosh, I could go on and on about that. But
there's a higher return rate to prison than there is to Disneyland, Disney World. The way that I see myself daily now is just to be of service to other people and like be the best mom and wife that I can be and the best friend that I can be and a good sponsor. The way that I like looked at myself before was I was this liar, a thief, a cheat. I was, snaky, I wasn't a good anything. And so now when I realized I was pregnant, in my head, I was like, I'm going to be the best mom that I can be to this little girl. Like, I didn't know it was a little girl at the time. I had a gut feeling, but at that time I was like, you know what? This isn't about me anymore. Like, I'm so selfish. I need to be less selfish. I need to do this for other people. My family cares about me and they're all suffering right now. The people that care about me have to go through hell because of what I'm putting them through. And so daily, my goal when I wake up is to be of service to somebody else, to wake up and tell my story, no matter how many negative things people say about me or how society views it. I'm willing to put myself on the line to share my story because of the fact that it could help somebody else out, you know? So that's my power, is like, who can I help out of that darkness today? Like, who can I give some hope to?
That is so powerful. Like, oh my gosh, you continuously giving me cold chills here.
After I decided to post a picture on social media, my Instagram, the date was December 16th. I remember it clearly, or it was November 16th. I received such a positive feedback, and I was like, I can do this. Like, I don't need to hide from something that I can't control. And after that, the first day of going to school bald was just super hard. I remember walking up the steps of my high school, like wanting to turn around and just drive home. But I could just feel, so many eyes on me in the hallways, even though they knew, right? But after that,
they already like
and
knew, could see it.
They knew. So, but then after that, I was like, I'm going to buy so many wigs and wear whatever I want at any day, because like, that's amazing. I remember I wore blonde one day, brown the next day, just super long black hair, bald the next day, like a week straight of different wigs. Cause I was like, I can do that,
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I know that if I were in high school with you and you were coming to school with all these different hairstyles, I would be secretly jealous that you are rocking that. Cause I think, I think that's amazing. And like you said, like using it as an accessory and just being like, okay, today I'm going to do it this way. I think that's awesome. This is your normal. This is what your life is. And I think that, we should have more, compassion, not sympathy, but just compassion and understanding that, because people do things differently and look differently, that, it's not always a bad thing. But I definitely think what you're doing and telling people about your story and just, making light of it and talking about the fun things is an encouragement, especially to younger girls who may be struggling with similar situations.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I think, to me, that all of what I used to go through, not having someone there with me or understanding of it, was what made me really like have a purpose in my life to want to share it and just inspire others, because my DMs are flooded with younger girls just sharing their story and saying this and like asking me tips, or how do I do this and deal with this, and being able to know that I'm helping others makes me happy.
Most definitely. I want to thank my guests again so much for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. If you guys personally felt connected with any of the stories and you would like to purchase one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it as a reminder to step into your own power, you can do so at jessicajames.com. That's JESCAJAYMES.com. And of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at I Am Power Club, and like and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power. See you then.